Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters, Fox News strategic analyst. And Colonel, good morning to you, and thank you for coming back to our program. You have watched this newspaper with its satire for years, and now this is what you get for freedom of the press.
Absolutely. And by the way, these terrorists who did this monstrous attack in Paris are the people Senator Feinstein doesn't even want to waterboard. Bill, you know, when you said good morning, my response, my instinct was, no, it's not a good morning. It's a terrible morning. It's a bad morning for press freedom, for freedom of information. It's bad because the terrorists won. The terrorists won this morning. We're going to sorrow and make faces and say how terrible it all is, but even if those terrorists are tracked down and killed, and I hope they are killed and they die miserably, the result, the end result of this is going to be we're going to continue to self-censor. Charlie Hebdo, this satirical magazine, this weekly, it was the bravest publication I know. There is not a single magazine in the English-speaking world that had the guts, the courage, to take on Islamist fanaticism and mock these fanatics the way Charlie Hebdo is. And the correct response to this attack by all of us in journalism, we pretend to be so brave. If we had guts, those cartoons would be reprinted on the front page of the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the LA Times tomorrow. They won't be. We won't, and again, we'll cry, but we're going to continue to self-censor. Brave journalists died, and cowardly ones will profit.
The French have a lot of concern, Ralph, as you know. These were highly trained men, and they had automatic weapons, and by all accounts, they were well trained, and they knew exactly where their targets were. Yes. So what now?
Well, first of all, Dr. Waleed Phares earlier in the show really nailed it. This was a military operation. It was terrifying. I mean, these guys, these weren't amateurs, these weren't clowns. And so what are the implications? Well, we're seeing terrorism get more and more sophisticated, more and more pervasive. And Bill, the bottom line is we have lost the will to fight. We're in a period of strategic decadence when we're more worried about, again, about, you know, maybe our interrogations are too harsh. We're worried about our enemy, hurting our enemy's feelings, and they are slaughtering people. I mean, this is, again, put it in perspective. This was a horrible attack on brave journalists. But every day, dozens and hundreds of people are slaughtered around the world by Islamist extremists, and we will not come to grips with it. Our president will not come to grips with it. Journalism will not come to grips with it. Even our military is lawyer-addled, lawyer-ridden, and worried about offending our enemies. This is a civilizational struggle, not what Samuel Huntington called a clash of civilizations, because there's no civilization on the other side. It's our job to defend civilization against barbarians. And again, this is going to be a headline story. Everybody's going to say how terrible it was. We're going to be sad for those brave journalists. And we are not going to stand up. We in the journalism world are not going to stand up against fanatical Islam. We're just not going to do it.
Ralph, it appears the White House changed its language within an hour this morning. Initially calling it a terrible act of violence, then Josh Earnest about 30 minutes ago talked about the act of terrorism, and the president put out a statement about the terrorist act and talked about the fight against terrorists. So then, yes, is this a case where the White House perhaps has gotten it right now?
No, because it has to say Islamist terror. This administration is just soft on radical Islam. It's just stunning to me. I mean, look, the problem, again, we've said it forever. The problem isn't all of Islam. But within Islam, there is this horrible cancer of radical Islamist fanaticism that this administration simply will not address, and it continues to pander to the most radical voices here in the United States at the expense of law-abiding, productive Muslim American citizens. So, look, if the President of the United States will not call a problem by its proper name, will not admit what the problem is, how on earth can we begin to address it? Again, let me just say that my heart, it's not an empty statement, my heart is with the families of those incredibly brave, gutsy journalists in France. You know those cartoons they ran? They were often crude, stupid, sophomoric, dumb, and incredibly brave. And we need to stand up for that kind of bravery, not cower in our corners and pat ourselves in the back.